After refusing to report to an Indian reservation, Lakota Sioux leader Crazy Horse has been preparing his warriors to fight the United States Army for months. And he's just gotten word from his scouts that American forces are on their way. But the Lakota have brought together a massive force of their own. And they're determined to crush the invading army.
Yuha wakan tanka po unkyupe. Tatanka yu tanka ukichise. Uhihiye. Ukaga pe kitkin wayanke. Ugle tikian. Machoke letan. Kaha. Wajan peki.
I think Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse saw all that territory as belonging to them. They realized that they were going to be invaded and what was precious to them was going to be taken away, so they fought against that.
Several miles away, Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer has led his 7th Cavalry far ahead of a much larger American force.
He doesn't wait for reinforcements. Custer wants this to be a victory for the 7th Cavalry and the 7th Cavalry alone.
Custer believes that defeating Sitting Bull will be the crowning achievement of his military career and will clear a path straight to the White House.
Custer gets up on top of those bluffs, and then he sees this amazing village that seems like it stretches forever. There might be as many as 6,000 Indians in this village. He's got less than 1,000 men.
We'll split our forces. You keep the front busy, and I will attack from the rear. No retreat. I need those warriors busy. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Custer decides to employ a military strategy that worked for him at the Battle of Washita 8 years earlier. He splits his men into 2 smaller forces. Custer's second in command, Major Marcus Reno, and his men will attack the camp from the left, while Custer and his troops attack the flank on the right, dividing the Sioux warriors.
Custer's quite consciously, I think, very aggressive in dividing his men so that he can come at this camp from multiple directions. He demonstrated himself to be either tremendously daring or tremendously reckless, or perhaps both.
Yeah! Come on now. Makijita. Tu. Voilà. Voilà. Nachnyo. Nachnyo.
There's just such a beautiful romance, I think, to Crazy Horse, the ultimate Sioux warrior. Custer, the ultimate American warrior of their time, meeting on that final field. The Sioux are at the height of their power, and here comes Custer just right at that moment. Almost like it's meant to be.
Following Custer's orders, Reno's command is the first to engage the Indians.
Major Reno completely loses his composure, panics, he retreats, and it's a complete disaster. His men are scrambling for their lives.
As Custer arrives to the battlefield, Major Reno and his men are nowhere to be found.
Custer's men are pushed back. They take up defensive positions along a ridgeline, surrounded by thousands of Sioux and Cheyenne, led by Crazy Horse.
Hold your positions. Keep firing. Take out your saber.
Sir, what do we do?
We have all this imagery of the Indians closing in and his regiment being a very compact group. It was actually a very messy, bloody, terrifying last few moments. A lot of men said, you know, the thing is save the last bullet for your life. Maybe Custer committed suicide. I don't know. I just find it hard to believe that he would ever give up. I think he would fight as long as he could fight.
On June 25th, 1876, George Armstrong Custer and over 250 of his troops are killed at the Battle of Little Bighorn. Celebrated Civil War hero George Armstrong Custer and over 250 of his men lay dead on the battlefield of Little Bighorn.
Akichitaki. Tianke. Wiankina. Telutia. And now Washichuki. Hecha Dugduknu.
The Battle of the Little Bighorn has mixed emotions. On one hand, it was the greatest day for us because we showed our strength and our wisdom and our spirituality. But it was also our worst day because of everything that happened after that.
News of the defeat quickly reaches Washington.
There were no survivors.
Not that we know of. There's still a chance a stray soldier will show up.
Custer?
Dead. A bullet in his brain.
The Battle of Bighorn was this one single event that had a much broader picture to it, and that had to do with the settling of the West and the loss of parts of the West to Native Americans.
President Ulysses S. Grant's show of force against the Sioux is a total failure. And the massacre soon makes headlines across the country.
This is the biggest story for the last half of the 19th century. George Armstrong Custer was America's most romantic, dashing, heroic cavalry figure. Ordinary citizens loved him.
Appalled by the slaughter, the country demands action.
When Americans at large heard this story, what they heard was that these savage Indians had massacred these brave white cavalry. They thought, okay, well, this means that they have to be punished. They have to be driven back to the reservation.
With only months left in office, Grant's plan for peace with the Indians has failed, and the country is no closer to securing the gold-rich Black Hills. While the Indian Wars continue, Grant's battle with Southern sympathizers is getting worse. As former Confederates like Jesse James
Cover it up.
continue to resist Northern interference after the war, including a policy known as Reconstruction.
The major question coming out of the end of the Civil War is, what do you do with 4 million freed slaves? What are their rights? What are their positions in society? Reconstruction comes up with an answer. They have equal rights. There are senators and congressmen who are Black. And tremendous progress gets made. But of course, there were elements that wanted to set the clock back, that were not satisfied with the end of the Civil War, and certainly weren't satisfied with these former slaves now having equal rights with them.
At the end of the Civil War, thousands of Union Army troops remained in the South to enforce the government's Reconstruction policies. For Jesse James, the Northern occupation of the South represents everything he's been fighting against. And now, with a nation facing an upcoming election, he plans to make his biggest demonstration of Southern resistance yet by launching his first big attack deep in Northern territory.
You can rob a bank in Missouri. Why do you have to go hundreds of miles away to rob a bank? They got plenty of banks. because he had heard that the Reconstruction governor of Mississippi, Delbert Ames, had relatives up in Northfield, and a lot of his money was in this bank. And James decided, we're gonna go up there and we're gonna rob that bank to take the money of the Reconstruction governor of Mississippi.
Working with his brother Frank and the rest of the James gang, Jesse spends weeks planning a heist so bold, it's sure to grab national attention.
All right, this time we're gonna do it a little different. We're gonna split up into 3 groups. Clell, cut all the telegraph wires. We don't want any information getting in or out of town. Cole, Bob, I want you to stand guard out front of the bank. Frank, Charlie, 3 of us will head inside.
Now, when the robbery's over, we're all gonna meet down here under this bridge. We'll be 100 miles away before anyone knows what happened.
Who's the cashier?
Cashier's not here today, sir.
Have a seat, son.
Open the safe.
I cannot open the safe, sir.
You know what I don't like? I don't like being lied to. You open that safe now.
The key to the success for the James gang has always been speed, quickness.
There ain't nothing in here.
Joseph Lee Haywood, the cashier that day, delayed them.
Open the goddamn safe! Who's the cashier?
Huh?
Turn around!
You cashier? Turn around!
Jesse James decides he's gonna attack this bank, or maybe he didn't even know, on the first day of hunting. So you had all these hunters who are in town buying supplies, and they're getting very suspicious because there are a bunch of dudes standing outside the bank with guns.
Clear the streets! Move your asses inside!
Jesse's men are firing off their guns, telling people to get back. This is kind of shock and awe in the middle of the street. But these people aren't being shocked, and they're not being awed. Townspeople are starting to fight back. They're coming to protect their bank.
Jesse, time's up! Jesse, we gotta go. Come on now.
Back up! Get on your knees. Get on your knees. Stay on your knees.
Come on, Jesse, we gotta go!
It's pandemonium. The outlaws are firing revolvers, which are pretty inaccurate on horseback. The townspeople have shoulder guns. They're very accurate. These guys are getting shot to pieces on the street. It was a complete disaster for the James gang, and the only thing for them to do is to try to get out of town alive.
Gotta go, Jesse! Send him on now!
I can't.
Joseph Lee Haywood, the acting cashier that day, was a thorn in the side to the plans of these robbers. He delayed them. They don't get the money they come for. In fact, the safe was unlocked the whole time. Had they just tried that handle, it would have opened up and revealed about $15,000.
The robbery is a complete failure. The people of Northfield stood up to Jesse James. Now they want justice. And Jesse James is running for his life. After Jesse James's latest heist at the Northfield Bank, local citizens are on a mission to track down the notorious outlaw and his gang.
In the West, there were these citizens who, in their passion, their anger, their authority that they thought they had, they go out to bring these men to justice. They were law-abiding citizens who take the law into their own hand.
News of the pursuit quickly spreads across the country, turning a small-town chase into the largest manhunt in United States history.
There were at least 1,000 men going after these guys. It was instant national news, especially when the James gang was associated with this robbery. There were dozens of newspaper reporters that went along with the posses, keeping track of the manhunt and how it was progressing. Jesse and Frank were Southern boys and murderers. They were hated in Minnesota, and everyone wanted to see them captured and brought to justice.
Over the course of 2 weeks, almost all of the James gang is either captured or killed. The only fugitives they're unable to track down are Jesse and his brother Frank.
These guys were masters at concealing themselves and getting away. They had to do it all during the Civil War. They were always outnumbered. They always had people chasing them. Northfield was the biggest disaster the Jameses had experienced since the Civil War. They lost men that they had fought with. They both suffered gunshot wounds. But I think in a way, mentally in some way, they're wounded as well.
Now, the most wanted man in America is forced to go into hiding. And it will be 2 years before the world gets another glimpse of Jesse James. While his robbery may have been a failure, Jesse's Confederate cause may finally have a victory. With the presidential election just around the corner, a strong pro-South candidate named Samuel Tilden has emerged with a plan to put an end to Reconstruction.
Samuel J. Tilden had criticized emancipation. Tilden was explicit about wanting to end Reconstruction and attacking Reconstruction. And Tilden was also overtly racist.
Opposing him is a former Union general named Rutherford B. Hayes.
Hayes was the governor of Ohio, and he was a mainstream Republican. Hayes would say, we want to make sure that blacks' rights are guaranteed.
On November 7th, 1876, Southerners flocked to the polls in unprecedented numbers, knowing that if they can put Tilden in the White House, they could put an end to Northern policies that have been in place since the end of the war. On election night, votes roll in from across the country.
Governor Hayes, news from Washington.
But when the returns are counted, the results are unclear.
The morning after the election of 1876, it's not quite clear who has won. The returns from 3 southern states were disputed: South Carolina, Florida, and Louisiana. And both sides claimed to have carried those states for their candidate. In 2000, we went through another disputed presidential election, and of course there it focused on disputed returns from Florida. So there was great confusion, uncertainty, a lot of heated political rhetoric.
With no clear winner, Americans begin to panic, and rumors began to spread.
It was an unprecedented situation. Some Democrats said if Tilden is not inaugurated, 100,000 people will march on Washington. People talked about a new civil war.
There's rumors of 100,000 men marching on the Capitol.
Have 4,000 men ready to defend the Capitol. Post the USS Wyoming in the Potomac. Peace must be maintained at all costs.
Yes, sir.
After dealing with an economic depression and leading an unsuccessful war against the Indians, Ulysses S. Grant is facing his final political crisis. And now he needs to find a way to keep the country from falling apart. Three months after the election of 1876 ends in controversy, tensions between North and South are the highest they've been since the Civil War ended. And the future of the country hangs in the balance.
Electoral votes, that must be one.
I don't care how many electoral votes he has, all right?
To find a solution, a secret meeting is convened between the teams of both presidential candidates.
Hayes men and Tilden men got together in a hotel in Washington and hammered out an agreement.
There has to be some give and some take.
We give you the presidency, and you pull out the troops. It's that simple, gentlemen. We want the troops out of the South.
After over 8 million Americans cast their votes, the presidency is ultimately decided by 15 men in a backroom deal that will come to be known as the corrupt bargain.
The deal was Hayes would become president, but in exchange for this, he would withdraw remaining federal troops from the South. This would bring Reconstruction under military authority to a definitive end.
The end of Reconstruction is a victory for Southerners who've rallied around rebels like Jesse James. But for newly freed African Americans, it comes at a heavy cost.
The bargain of 1877 marks the end of a federal commitment to protect the basic rights of black citizens in the South. It basically recognizes the white supremacist Democratic Party as being in control.
With one decision, the rights of freed slaves in the South to vote and hold office are no longer protected. It will be nearly another 100 years before they are granted equal rights under the Constitution. The deal marks a sad end to Grant's presidency.
when Grant got the nomination in 1868. The phrase that won him the hearts of most Americans was, "Let us have peace." That was the platform that he ran on. But in 1876, he was losing in the battle with respect to Indian policy. Now, he lost the battle with respect to equal rights for freedmen in the South.
Despite his failings, Grant oversaw the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad and kept a divided country together. But when Hayes finally takes office in 1877, he inherits a country with numerous problems.
Rutherford B. Hayes comes in, and it is, to say the least, a controversial election. Half the country doesn't think he's the rightful president. And he's dealing with the economic crisis coming off the Panic of 1873, the greatest depression in American history up to that point. And he still has to avenge the death of Custer by getting Crazy Horse.
I know you're familiar with our present situation with the Sioux. It's pervasive.
Gentlemen, we've got to fix this.
After the Army's embarrassing defeat at Little Bighorn, Hayes is under pressure to ramp up military efforts against the Indians. And General William Tecumseh Sherman sees the opportunity he's been waiting for.
We deployed 1,200 troops here, about 240 miles to the west here. Then we wiped Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull's war party out.
All resources are put into defeating the Indians. The debate over the peace policy is over. It's a war policy from now on. The natives are going to be totally subjugated.
But Sherman has a plan that he believes will not only defeat the Indians on the battlefield, but could forever alter their way of life. To defeat the Lakota Sioux once and for all, General William T. Sherman looks to a brutal tactic he used during the Civil War. A policy called total warfare. During his march across Georgia, Sherman's troops torched 300 miles of civilian homes, farms, and livestock.
General William Tecumseh Sherman was ruthless. He realized that he had to cut the heart out of the South. He had to stop their base from functioning so the armies would be starved. It was terrible what he did. Very successful, but honestly, ruthless.
Sherman knows he can apply a similar tactic to defeat the Indians that will guarantee victory, destroying something essential to their survival: the buffalo. At their peak, tens of millions of buffalo roamed the plains, from Canada to New Mexico. For tribes like the Lakota, the buffalo are critical to their survival.
The buffalo was our life. We used every part of the buffalo. Nothing was wasted. We used the bones, the hide, of course, the meat.
The internal organs we used for strings and bags. We always lived around the buffalo. I mean, wherever they went, that's where we went.
The U.S. military encourages Eastern hunters to travel west, providing them with shelter, protection, and ammunition. Enticed by the Army's offer and the opportunity to make up to $700 a day, the hunters massacre entire herds of buffalo, all in a plot to starve the Indians.
White hunters come out and just kill buffalo, kill as many as they can. There's stories of a single white hunter killing maybe 5,000 buffalo in a season, very large numbers.
As the hunt expands, railroad companies begin to promote the buffalo's extermination, offering hunting by rail expeditions where men shoot the animals from moving trains. Some men become celebrities by the sheer number of buffalo they kill, including hunter William Cody, who takes down 4,000 buffalo in 18 months, earning the nickname Buffalo Bill. By 1877, the buffalo's population, once estimated at 60 million, plummets to below 2,000.
I really believe that was planned to help exterminate us. Because once they took the buffalo from us, they took our way of life.
The American government's policy to eradicate the buffalo was no better than genocide. It was a matter of psychological warfare. If you eradicate the buffalo, you eradicate the Indian.
Le way wakanhijan zaptan tiape.
Uchi makochi kikte. Nach e tatranka. You copy. Ushichu kichata. Kikte teshni.
Wasichuki. Wiana wakanhijan. Unkito aki. Uchaktepe, te, takue unche, mokonche, hikanya, enaje pikte, luchawo.
Lakota leaders Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull face a difficult decision. Stay in the Great Plains and fight, or move their people away from everything they've ever known.
These men were hunters, they were fighters, they were providers. They had pride, they had strong spirits. Everything they did at that point was just to stay alive.
As the Indians fight for survival, over 750 miles away, a new breed of outlaw is about to emerge, including an unknown teenage cattle thief who will soon become the most wanted man in the West. When the Civil War ends in 1865, America must decide how the South will rejoin the Union. The set of policies governing the Confederate States' return is called Reconstruction.
Reconstruction is really the effort of the country to come to terms with the status of the 4 million former slaves.
Under Reconstruction, Congress enacts the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which guarantees former slaves the same rights as white citizens. But the law meets with heavy resistance.
Southern whites tended to look on Reconstruction as something that was imposed on them from without. It was, from their perspective, a continuation of the Civil War, in which Northerners imposed their will, imposed their ways on the South.
Over the next few years, as Southern Democrats begin to reclaim political power, they enact laws that counteract the Civil Rights Act, including Jim Crow laws mandating segregation. Many former slaves choose to leave Southern states and seek a new life in the West.
Black people left the South for the same reason everybody else did, to find other opportunities, and for the most part, to escape racism and white supremacy in the South.
In Tennessee, one particularly violent group begins to form. It's called the Ku Klux Klan.
The Klan was founded more or less as a social organization, but very quickly it evolves into what we'd call terrorism. They conducted really violent reigns of terror to undermine these new Reconstruction governments in which black men were voting and holding office.
In 1871, President Ulysses S. Grant sends federal troops to dismantle the Klan. But even when the group is officially disbanded, widespread resentment about Reconstruction and Northern racial policies continues in the South. After the Compromise of 1877 brings President Hayes into office, Reconstruction is declared officially over. It will be nearly 100 years before civil rights are restored to black Americans.
Today, Reconstruction is viewed as a period of progress, of optimism, of a significant experiment in democracy in this country. And the tragedy is not that it was attempted, but that it didn't succeed, and therefore left to future generations this question.